Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position,
stand your ground,
and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast. And my guest today is Representative Kevin West, who has faithfully served House District 54 since 2016, I believe. And I want to pick his brain about what he is working on this legislative session. It's about to kick off in just a couple of weeks or a few weeks. And of course, he is doing double time running for another office. We're going to dive into that as well. But welcome to the show, Representative West.
Thanks a lot, Jake. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Well, you have been one of the go-to stalwart conservatives in the House for the last several years. Was I correct in saying 2016? Is that when you first came in?
16 is when I was first elected. 17 was my first session.
Okay, right. And House District 54, where is that located in Oklahoma?
That is North Moore and a little sliver of South Oklahoma City.
Okay. Well, you, we've talked several times, of course, interviews and talking about the legislation you're working on. As it usually goes, you don't always get everything you want. And so we may cover some of the same pieces that you have been working on in the past. I don't know. Are some of those same pieces recirculating this year? Are you still pushing some of the same stuff?
Well, I definitely have. There are two from last year that are still live. One of them is the display of pride flags on government property. And I think late last year we had kind of worked out some language that I'll be able to at least get it through the House. I have no idea what's going to happen over in the Senate. And then I have a bill that's sitting over in the Senate, and this one gets a little bit complicated, but it is dealing with the franchise fees that are added onto utility costs. And what the problem is, when the legislature approved the securitization, we did not specifically prohibit franchise fees from being tacked on to that. Now, that was never the intention of the legislature. And now what we had Oklahoma City sued to be able to do it. The Corporation Commission said, no, you don't do this. But Oklahoma City kept pushing it. They sued. And the court ruled that since the legislature didn't specifically prohibit it, that it could be added on. So this would just make it clear that securitization and any future things like that would not be subject to that additional franchise fee.
Okay. And I mean, I think stuff like this, true conservative legislation, I believe it supports the free market and only facilitates the growth of our economy.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting why a city like Oklahoma City that seems very, I'm going to use this word, progressive, not in the sense of like crazy left-wing progressive, although we do have issues with the current mayor, who's a bit progressive himself. It just is interesting as they are wanting to move forward and expand their economy. Why would they be against something like this?
Well, funny that you asked that, because really what I think it boils down to is it's a cash cow. That the franchise fees they have to be voted on by the people, and they are for very specific purposes, and that's added on to what your bill is. And so when people have approved those, and they usually run for like 10 years and have to be renewed about every 10 years. Since this is being added on to that cost, even though it's a separate chunk of money, you can see real quick where that's going to increase a lot of revenue. And I believe that Commissioner Anthony had estimated that it would cost an additional $100 million.
Wow.
Over a fairly short period of time. And because almost every city has franchise fees, and that's also, assuming the ones that will participate in that. Not all municipalities are trying to do that, but to me, it just feels like kind of double dipping. And it also looks like not only a cash cow, but also a way that the ratepayers wind up financing the securitization for these municipalities.
No doubt. And, it's frustrating when public servants get into positions of leadership, and then they are working on behalf of the state or the city, not on behalf of the people.
Yeah.
And which is exactly what I see you trying to do, and that is your history as well. It's something I celebrate, love to bring attention to. It's this dichotomy we see between certain legislators, those that are interested in increasing the coffers of the state and the cities, municipalities, and those that are interested in keeping more money in the pockets of the people.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the latter myself, and I know you are as well.
I am too. And, when I started looking at this was a year and a half ago when that very first came to my attention. And I do want to point out to everybody, this is one of those cases where the Corporation Commission was on the right side. They were saying, no, that's not what was intended. And advising to not do it. They even denied the application at first. But this was truly, and every player what on the state side was on the right side on this. And they kept pushing it all the way until they got a court ruling that said, well, and it is true. The legislation that we passed, it was rushed through. Mm-hmm. I think most of your listeners will remember that was stuff that I was not in favor of, and not that I knew about this specifically, but one of my biggest problems with it was that we were going so fast with that legislation. And anytime you do something like that super fast, you run the risk of missing something.
Yeah.
And this happens to be one of those things. But
why was that rushed through?
Well, I believe it was rushed through so that we could just get it on the books and be able to move on down the road. One of the things that I kept pointing out was, when it got passed, it was in, I believe, March is when it got signed into law. And part of the reasoning that we were being told was so that we could get the process started, because utility companies had to apply for it and go through a whole entire process with the Corporation Commission and a whole bunch of other hoops.
Right.
And they were saying that, with that length of time, the longer it goes, the more it's going to cost and all of this. Well, even with us passing it in March, it was almost a year to the day before the very first securitization bonding was fully approved and implemented. So I kept saying, there's no reason we can't wait until toward the end of session. We can run legislation through the House and Senate and get it to the governor pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
You've been there. You've seen how we can move quickly if we want
Sure.
to.
It's
And
amazing how that happens. When you decide to do it, you can actually do it.
exactly. And at the time that we passed it, we didn't even know. We couldn't even get told. We were being told it was somewhere between this huge number and this much larger number. They didn't even know what the full impact was going to be. And so to me, when that passed,
From Modus Health in Yukon, Oklahoma. Sorry, I had a little interruption there. Okay, go ahead.
but the way it looked to me was that when the legislature passed that, we just passed a blank check and
Yeah.
hoping for the best.
How does this change things with this additional focus on the securitization and the franchise tax? I mean, do you feel like this solidifies this piece of legislation, that it will be thoroughly vetted and looked over, and this should complete this?
I think that this really gets us in a good spot. I mean, your listeners probably completely realize that once we open the door to something, because before we passed securitization, we did not have a mechanism for securitization to be utilized in the state of Oklahoma. We've kicked the barn door open right now. Now, I will say the way that one is written, it is written for that specific event. But once you have that on the books, it's real easy to just copy and paste it, change what it's for, the dates, and go forward with it. But we have put several pieces in for transparency and vetting to make sure that we know what we're getting ourselves into for future review. And I think that this is a key piece of it. If a municipality wants to put that franchise fee on top of that, in my opinion, that should be voted on by the people in that area if they agree with that or not. And if they agree with it, then hey, more power to you.
Right. Yeah, we're going to leave it to local control. I love that. We have to prioritize. I always say the best answer is most local. So let the municipalities and the counties decide what they want to do. Let's rewind a little bit to the first one you mentioned, which dealt with pride flags.
Yes.
What exactly does this piece of legislation want to accomplish, and does it focus specifically on pride flags?
Well, as it went through the process last year, and we now have in the House, we have a tiered committee system. And so it went through the first committee, and then it came to the oversight committee. And based on the conversations in that committee, I offered to hold the bill over so that I could make changes based on the conversation that we had. And so it started off being basically you're not going to do like pride flags, things like that. It had it was very specific on what you couldn't do. Based on the conversation that we were having in oversight, most of the committee members felt more comfortable if we said what you could do. So I had made some changes along those lines, and it passed fairly easily. It came to the floor, and then things started getting brought up. You wind up having to create a long list of things that can be done. And when you start talking about state property and you get into some of our military facilities, some of them are completely state, some are joint state and federal, and some are federal. So you start getting into a lot of confusion. So they felt that it really should be listing what is prohibited on state property. So in for respect, I went and I talked to all of the committee members. They didn't have a problem with that change, but since the whole process is meant to reduce the number of floor amendments, that's one of the main things, so that we have much more transparency.
Mm-hmm.
They felt that they would rather it come back to the committee and go through that process with that light. And so that's what I agreed to do. I brought it back to the oversight committee, and we'll be working on that one. But ultimately, what it's going to be is, you're not going to display like the pride flag, BLM. We'll have some parameters that capture things, but it will still allow for, like at the Capitol, sometimes we will display like the MIA flag and
Right.
different things like that. And then we also have there on that north venue where we have all those a lot of tribal flags, a lot of military flags get displayed there. So it started getting pretty complicated
Yeah.
by going in that other direction.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's saying, what about my flag?
Yeah.
Now, what was the holdup last year on this?
Well, the only holdup really was, do we do it as this is what you can display, or do we do it as this is what you can't display?
Okay.
And initially the committee felt like it should be what you can display.
Mm-hmm.
And then the floor team felt like it should be a what you can't. And so I told the floor team, I said, well, let's just hold on to that for a minute. And I went and I talked to all of the committee members, and they said, I don't disagree with switching it back to that, but that's not what we voted on in committee. So we would like to just have a chance to have that conversation in committee. And I was like, okay, I'm cool with that. So
Okay. Take some time sometimes to work through the process, and sometimes it's delayed a whole year. Now, what kind of pushback have you had from the community? I mean, has the LGBTQ community risen up against this? I'm sure they have, but what have you experienced on that front?
Well, initially, I got a lot of pushback on that from the LGBT community. But surprisingly, last year when I ran that bill, I also ran the one that was dubbed the anti-drag queen bill that did get signed by the governor. And surprisingly, I had there wasn't anybody or very few at the committee hearings or whenever they were heard on the floor. In previous years, I'd had the entire hallway, excuse me, the entire hallway and the committee room completely packed. So I don't know if they just kind of took it that, hey, this is inevitable, or exactly what the deal was with that.
Right.
But last year I didn't get a whole lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd be glad to see that go through. And I mean, I'm expecting this would also be received well in the other chamber in the Senate. Any expected obstacles there?
I don't necessarily expect any obstacles. For the most part, the way that things worked last year, our floor leader team seemed, I say our floor leader and his immediate group seemed to have a really good working relationship with the Senate floor team. And so we didn't have near as many of those rocky bumps that we've had in the past. Pretty much if it got approved and passed in one chamber, of course, there's always things that might get missed or something specific on a bill, but the concept, generally speaking, we were pretty much on board with, on the same page with each other last year.
Yeah.
Hopefully that continues.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for the sake of the expedited process, so we can get the good bills through, so it's not hung up with,
Yeah.
personality conflicts and all of the political games that we often hear and see about.
Yeah, and that's really kind of how that went. We kind of prioritized the things that we agreed on, and then I mean that's not to say we still didn't send pieces of legislation over to the Senate that they weren't necessarily thrilled about.
Sure.
And same for us, but it was something that had passed that chamber, and but that allowed us to really focus on the ones that we really needed to,
Yeah.
and the ones that everybody was pretty much on board with, were able to continue through the process.
Absolutely. Well, I had a couple of more on my radar that you were working on. One, of course, this is a nationwide trend. I've been talking about it. It's property tax. And what will we do? What does the future look like with property tax here in Oklahoma? Of course, we got this initiative petition that is moving forward, it looks like, to end the homestead portion of the property tax.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've said that I agree with that. I'm kind of one of those that would like to just do away with it altogether. And of course, you have to make up the void that is left there to fund those local services. But I'm curious what your approach to property tax is this session.
Yeah, well, I know it really started last year. I guess property tax has pretty much always been discussed up at the Capitol at some level, but it seemed like last year there was a really focused, concentrated effort on that. And so I think that that's some of what facilitated the state question that's circulating right now out for signatures. I fully expect that there will be multiple bills filed this year, and I am filing one. I've worked with some of my county people, and the one that I'm filing that'll wind up being just part of the overall conversation, because generally when we have a topic like this, what we wind up doing is we take all of the bills that get filed, get those people kind of together, and kind of pick and choose what we think is the best of the best, and what we can get through, and kind of put that all together. So so this one will be part of the conversation, but what it does, it increases the homestead exemption amount by $1,000 just immediately, and then the counties will have the ability, if certain metrics are met, we're given this extra $1,000, and we still have over the course of like 3 years, we're still a certain percentage above in our coffers, then we can give, and at that point, the county could give kind of a range up to amount, but it could wind up being a total, I believe, of about $4,000 reduction over time on that. And like I said, that's part of the conversation. I know we'll talk about my other run, my run for labor commissioner in a little bit. But with that, I've been all over the state, and of course, property tax winds up getting brought up.
Yeah.
And even within some of the GOP group, they're probably the one concern with the state question is that it doesn't have a built-in plan for how we're going to replace those revenues.
That's right. Yeah.
And as everybody knows, when you get your assessment at the end of the year, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go through there, and you can quickly see that about 60% of that winds up going to your local schools. It goes to a bunch of different things, and that's money that is not appropriated by the legislature. And so it will create some holes, there's no doubt. I know I've heard like Ron DeSantis in Florida talk about this. I believe that there are ways that we can replace that money. When you're putting excuse me, when you're putting more money in people's pocket, they wind up spending it. But we need to have a plan, and that seems to be one of the big barriers.
No doubt. That is the question, as I'm going around the state as well, that people ask that's their main concern, especially, when a county commissioner is in the room. They're saying, hold on, this is where we get the funds for those roads and everything that people want in the county. And it's true. We've got to be able to make that up for those essential services. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I've heard anything from, and I've even proposed everything from, increase in sales tax to tacking that property tax onto the front end, including it in your mortgage, so that, and I love that idea, so that when you pay off your property, you're done with the tax as well. That also, it motivates, incentivizes people to hang around and to not sell the property and move out of state.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for that. And what I really hope with the bills that get filed in the legislature, I really hope that we have at a minimum, we have a spinoff that is only focused on how do we address this, and make accommodations for it moving forward. How can we make this structurally work if and when we do eliminate that? So hopefully that I wouldn't necessarily want it to be the only conversation because as well as I do, you still got to get the signatures on the state question. And even if you do, then you got to get it passed. And so there's things that could happen there. But I would absolutely like to have a group that's really just focused on, how could we structurally do this moving forward?
Yeah. No, I mean, it has to be part of it is part of the conversation. It's unavoidable. And, they've been very clear, those that put this initiative petition forward, former Representative Mike Reynolds, and those who signed on to it. I know that Senator Shane Jett and Representative Stegall initially had. I think their names are still on that. And, they've been very clear. We're not trying to solve that second step problem of how to make that up. We're just trying to help people on the front end to remove this burden of the property tax on your homestead. And I think it's a great place to start. Of course, just securing the security of owning your own home, especially for seniors. That when you're just paid off, you're on a fixed income, you're not threatened with losing your property because you can't pay the tax. And that's what most people have a problem with.
And I think something like what you mentioned, at least to me, makes a ton of sense. It's based on while you are paying off your home, absolutely makes sense to individuals. And at that point, I would even be fine with the yearly assessments if it goes up, so that you buy your house for $100,000 and 30 years later it's worth 250, according to the assessments. Because that's been another thing, that's been a huge issue. But that really gets exasperated if at the time that you pay it off, you're still paying that tax and it's still going up year to year.
Yeah, still going up. And of course, lots of conversation around caps. I mean, I think that caps are a good thing, but it doesn't really address the root issue.
No.
And so,
No,
yeah,
we put a cap on something, and then we just bump the cap every
Right,
opportunity
exactly.
we get. You know.
That's it. Now, you mentioned it already, but that is where I was going, is your run for labor commissioner. Before we dive into that, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors real quick. Modus Health out in Yukon, Oklahoma. Here we go. Modus Health in Yukon, Oklahoma, here with Dr. Jeremy Moss. Dr. Moss, tell the people what all you guys do here at Modus Health.
So we are a full-service natural health care clinic, chiropractic, acupuncture, functional medicine, nutrition, massage, really anything from a natural, holistic, vitalistic perspective. That's what we do, and so we exist to serve for.
Yukon, Oklahoma, Dr. Jeremy Moss and his team, I know they can help you out. How do they get in touch with you?
Easiest way is just give us a call. So 405-494-0165. You'll call our front desk. We'll get you squared away as soon as we can. Typically, we can work patients in, sometimes even same day, but for sure within the same week, we'll get you in and get you feeling better soon.
All right. Gotta love Modus Health out there in Yukon, Oklahoma. If you have any back knee pain, go check them out. I'm here with Representative Kevin West, and we're talking about what bills, what pieces of legislation he's working on this session, because he still is in office as one of the conservative voices in the House, yet he has also thrown his hat into this race for labor commissioner. So be sure to check out votekevinwest.com. Representative West, what made you want to jump in for this role as labor commissioner?
Well, I get asked that a lot, and it's usually also followed up with why labor commissioner. So kind of on the why side first, why that position is because that position really affects Oklahomans day to day. I don't know what's up with my voice.
No worries.
And what the labor commissioner does is there's a lot of workplace safety issue working with OSHA. We are a federal OSHA state, but the department works hand in hand with OSHA. There's a lot of communication between the department and businesses for training and inspections to avoid, OSHA fines, things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, the department also inspects labor or elevators and boilers, things like that. So some of the things that they don't do currently, or at least very little, is really promoting the development and welfare of the wage earners of the state. And if you look at Title 40, which is what governs the Department of Labor, that's the very first thing that's listed under the duty of Commissioner of Labor, is to foster, promote, and develop the welfare of the wage earners of the state. So those are the things that I really want to focus on. My background before I got elected, I was a commercial cabinet maker and working with general contractors, typically large projects, hospitals, schools, things like that. So all of the workplace and job place safety, I know that like the back of my hand. But I really want to do that fostering and promotion for not only the trades, but just work in general.
Yeah.
Myself and David Bullard a few years ago passed a bill that allows apprenticeships down to 16-year-olds. And with that bill being passed, now the state doesn't administer those programs, but we do foster them. oversee them and recruit people to come in and facilitate that, whether it's through a career tech, a high school, or a not-for-profit. And we have had some not-for-profits spring up around that, and they're doing some fantastic stuff. I know here in Moore, when that very first passed, we had ballpark 15 to 20 students that were participating in programs like that. And today we have over 100 just in
Wow.
Moore. And
Just in
and
Moore.
they're not just going onto construction job sites or apprenticing with electrical contractors. We've got kids that are getting into pharmacies and even into some of the medical fields. So to me, you get kids exposed to stuff like this, and every exposure is a 100% success rate. And the reason I say that is because that person is either going to determine this isn't for me, and that tells them, okay, let's look somewhere else, or yeah, I really like this, let's continue doing this. And I know for myself, I'm old enough that I was first exposed to woodworking in the 6th grade. And once that really took a hold for me, then all of the other school subjects made sense. And I wanted to learn so that I could apply it to what my passion was.
Yeah.
And I think most people learn better if it's a practical application. I've done some research since I started my run for labor, and what I found was the top 10 states that have student participation in programs such as this, whether it's apprenticeships or internships or whatever it happens to be, the ones that have the highest, those top 10, 9 of them are top 25 in education outcomes. And the one that's not in top 25 is like high 30s. So I see a direct correlation there. And that's something that really doesn't cost the state any money. We have a great career tech system. We have businesses that need trained employees. And so I just see that as a pretty much no cost and huge benefit for the state.
No doubt. No doubt. And, of course, lots of conversation right now around AI replacing those digital technical jobs like coding. But, of course, there are going to be those trades like cabinet making, woodworking, masonry, electricians, and on, welders, that there's always going to be a need for. And we need real men, usually men. We need real people that are going to fill those jobs and provide those services. And so these apprentice positions are critical. Like you said, you were influenced at you said 6th grade?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you can never really start too young. I know there's a push to integrate VOTEC career training as I guess as young as freshman year. I'd be in favor of even going into the junior high years of, hey, let's go ahead and integrate that all the way through.
Yeah. Well, I know, all of the VOTECs do just a little bit different, but I've talked to several that have summer, I believe most of them call them like a summer camp, totally voluntary, but they start getting kids, in elementary school. They have a place for them where age appropriate, they can experience some of these various trades. And the whole point of that is to, hopefully they keep coming back year to year. And they get exposed those first few times, they're pretty much exposed to everything because you don't know what you're going to be interested in. And then you start, paring it down. Well, I'm really interested in these 4 things. And, a couple of years later, well, maybe just these 2. And then by the time you are able to enroll in that VOTEC, you have a really good idea of which one is of interest to you.
Yeah.
And as well as I do, even if you wind up not being in the trades, you still learn so many things, problem solving skills, how to work with people, different things like this that regardless of what you wind up doing, are still going to be a huge, huge benefit throughout your life.
Yes, absolutely. Now, as you are traveling the state in your campaign for labor commissioner, what's on the minds of the people? I know for a lot of people, they may not know exactly what the labor commissioner does. And so there needs to be a little bit of education there. But what are the questions and concerns that you're hearing from the people?
Most of it revolves around if they are people or a group that has contact with the department, those you get some very specific, and we need to continue to modernize the department. Online stuff is so huge right now that and we've made big strides in that area, in that department, and there's still a ways to go. So that's one of the big things. There's a few licensing that goes through the Department of Labor. Most licensing goes through the CIB, the Construction Industries Board,
right?
But some do go through the Labor Department, and again, modernizing that, working with industry, locksmiths are one of the big ones that still have and alarm companies have a lot of interaction with the department. And then you get into all of your inspections. Every county facility, everything gets inspected basically. If it can hold compressed air or water or whatever, it's subject to being inspected. So there's a lot of interaction with all 77 counties on that front. You get into your elevators, and then amusement rides, so even if it's like a county fair, there's that interaction. So, there is a lot of interface there, and you're exactly right. You wind up spending a lot of time discussing exactly what the position does.
Right.
But, having well-trained inspectors so that everything is consistent. I mean, me from our time in the legislature together, and then we've continued to talk. That's one of the big things for me is, reading what the rules and the laws say and applying it evenly and consistently,
Right.
because that consistency is really where the rubber meets the road. Because if today this is a violation, but tomorrow it's not, then we got major problems.
Yeah, you can't have a society that is unsure of what they're allowed to do. It needs to be clear, defined guidelines, and hopefully as little regulation as possible. So as a conservative, how do you approach that?
Well, the approach that I will take is to try to educate and not just come in and slap fines and go on down the road. If it's something that can be addressed right now, then let's do that. If If it's something egregious, then yeah, it probably needs a fine, or if it's a reoccurring. But as much as possible, working with these businesses, these elevator companies, whatever the entity is, just always having that approach first and foremost, hey, this is what needs to get done. We need to make this change, and we get the change done. Okay, let's move on down the road.
Yeah.
And that keeps everything flowing. It still maintains the safety. I want to stress to everybody, safety and the promotion of and welfare of the wage earners are the top priorities, because at the end of the day, if it's not a safe situation, then somebody's not going home at the end of the day, and we just cannot have that.
Now, one of the things you mentioned a minute ago was the oversight over wage claims, unpaid wages, minimum wage. So let's talk about minimum wage, because that's kind of on the radar right now with this state question to try to increase minimum wage. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I am 100% against, especially this state question. We have two state questions that go to the absolute extreme, and on the minimum wage, it would immediately raise minimum wage, I believe, to $15 an hour.
Right.
And
then sets it up to
yes,
incrementally increase in the years to come.
That's where the huge problem is. I mean, $15 an hour, that's a problem in and of itself. But when you're tying Oklahoma wages to a national inflation index, that just makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
You could very easily, in short order, have $25, $30 an hour minimum wage, which is just not sustainable, especially for a mom and pop type business, which we have a bunch of.
Absolutely. That's what it impacts most. But even those, chains and larger companies, what are they going to do? They're going to pass that down to the consumer.
They're going to do two things. You already see this. McDonald's in my area, you can get a fast food restaurant job starting off somewhere between $13 and $15 an hour. But when you go through a drive-through at McDonald's, what's the very first question they ask you? Are you using the mobile app?
It's
and
been
if
a while
you
since I've been
walk
through
in
McDonald's,
the store, they all have the kiosks.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is they're using things like that to maximize the staff that they have to have on hand.
Bare minimum,
And
right.
any business is going to do that. And if you start raising that, then you're just going to really force more AI, more of the technology, more robotics, whatever it is in whatever field, and you're just going to drive that through the roof. The other thing that they're going to do, the ones that they do have to hire, they'll hire enough people so that they don't have to pay them full time, so that they don't have to get into the benefits on top of that.
Right.
So would you rather make $13 an hour now and work 40 hours a week, or would you rather make $25 an hour and only work 10 hours a week? That's where we're headed.
Well, we have to have some common sense, and as people understand the role of the labor commissioner, they can see that we need common sense, especially there. That's going to directly impact these business owners, especially those mom and pop business owners. But all of the ones that we do business with on a daily basis, it's going to impact all of the consumers, which is everybody else.
Again, you go to any drive-through and order a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and it's going to cost you $10 today.
Yeah.
Just about anywhere you go. And it wasn't that long ago, you could get that same meal for $5 or $6.
Right.
The cost is going to go up. It's one of those things that sound appealing on the surface to the wage earner, but if you really dig into it and see where that winds up going,
Yeah.
you can see that it's really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would like to have someone with some common sense in that position there. So I appreciate you jumping in and running for labor commissioner across Oklahoma. Again, if you didn't see the ticker across the bottom there, we got what is it? VoteKevinWest.com.
Yep.
VoteKevinWest.com. Go check out more. And we'll be tracking the legislation that you're working on this year as well in session. Of course, you're doing double time, juggling both the campaign and session. That's always fun. But really appreciate you. We'll be praying for you as well, you and your family, and as you work through this session. So thank you for your service, sir.
Well, thank you, Jake, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your listeners, and just the opportunity to come and speak on some of these issues. If there is something that comes up during session that you're not aware of, please feel free to contact my office. I don't really care if you're live in District 54 or not. I'm happy to explain what the process is, where it's at, how you can best get involved. And then, of course, with the labor commissioner, I look forward to hopefully meeting most everybody. I've been trying to hit all 77 counties, and that, Jake, firsthand that's not an easy task.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But there are great people in every county, though, right? I mean, that's the best thing about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have met some of the most incredible people that I wouldn't have met if I wasn't running for this position. So I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I've enjoyed being in the legislature, and that was not a difficult or was not an easy decision to make, to give up 2 years, because I'm going into year 10 right now. But I just felt like the timing was right with the Trump administration trying to bring back manufacturing. With that comes all kinds of jobs. And I just think that we need to have somebody who has owned a business, operated a business, and also been out on those job sites working for a living. So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I, again, appreciate you and your service and your time here today. So we'll be following up with you down the road.
Okay. I look forward to it.
You bet. All right. Representative Kevin West, I appreciate all you guys tuning in today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Of course, share this show and share the channel as well, because we're bringing to you the things that I believe will most benefit you here in the state. That's why it's called Jake for the State. All right, guys, appreciate you. God bless. I'll see you next time.